Good morning to you. How are you?
Not too bad, lads. Keeping well. Keeping well. I haven't seen the Lance doc as of yet, but I'm still on the fence after hearing you both talk about it. It's one of those. It's slightly different to the Last Dance in that the doping is there, and as you said, there's this certain smugness about Lance that makes you kind of not want to watch him on screen for that period of time. But look, I might end up watching it.
The smugness is kind of funny. There's definitely I can't believe it. Look at it. Look how smug he is. Look, he's delighted with himself. It's like a child doing a perfect poo and discovering the poo is perfectly formed and going, look at this, I did this, look at this, I did this.
Yeah, he's an interesting character to say the least. But because I've even heard Marina Zenovich, the director, talking about Lance wasn't happy with some elements of this documentary, and you kind of got similar vibes off the Last Dance makers. Everyone's saying Jordan wasn't happy with some elements of this. You kind of feel it's a ploy to get people to watch it. Of course it is, but
Jordan edited it essentially. I mean, I know Herald says he didn't ask for anything to come in or out, but Jordan was involved in that in a way that Armstrong isn't, and certainly there was nothing in the first part that Lance Armstrong would be unhappy with. Maybe it's the type of thing that he does to create a bit of, say, I'm really unhappy with this thing that makes me look great. Anyway, what's going on in the world of sport? Busy enough?
Yeah, we'll kick off with a bit of soccer, lads. Premier League clubs will meet later to hold talks about moving to the next stage of Project Restart. They'll discuss returning to contact training for groups of up to 12 players ahead of a vote tomorrow. The league are reportedly confident a return date for the competition can be arranged by the end of this week. Meanwhile, the Women's Super League and Women's Championship seasons were ended with immediate effect yesterday. Matches in both divisions had been suspended due to this COVID-19 pandemic. The FA Board will now rule on how to end the season, which could mean awarding the title on a points per game basis or indeed declaring it null and void. So no indications yet which of those it will be. Meanwhile, Japan's Prime Minister has warned it's not certain the Tokyo Olympics will go ahead next year, even after a 12-month delay. Shinzo Abe says recovery will need to happen in Japan and the rest of the world, but he insisted the government hopes to hold the Games in a complete form with spectators as a proof of victory over COVID-19. On the pitch this evening in the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich can take a big step towards an 8th successive title this evening. They have a 4-point advantage at the summit of the table ahead of travelling to face their title rivals Borussia Dortmund in Der Klassiker. Dortmund are hopeful that Mats Hummels can shake off a knock to start against his former club. That's in the 5:30 kickoff. Elsewhere this evening, 4th place Bayer Leverkusen look to make it 3 wins in a row since the restart when they host Wolfsburg. Borussia Mönchengladbach go to struggling Werder Bremen, while Eintracht Frankfurt face Freiburg. Rugby could be set for a major overhaul if World Rugby adopts suggestions made by a new study. The research commissioned by rugby's governing body suggests removing face-to-face tackles and reset scrums to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. World Rugby are set to meet within the next 48 hours or so and are expected to announce a temporary set of rules which would also outlaw spitting on the pitch. And for those who missed Ron O'Gara and Keith Wood, they were on from 7:30 on OTB AM. They were on the show last night on Monday Night Rugby. They've spoke about some of the psychology of their roles during the game, goal kicking, of course, in the case of O'Gara, and line-out throwing for Wood. So some really good quotes in that. Full stuff up on offtheball.com. Ron O'Gara talking about it's like trying to drive on a motorway with the handbrake on when your confidence goes. So offtheball.com for all that really good stuff. Some golf news as well this morning. Shane Lowry will have a temporary new caddy for the next few months. With his regular right-hand man, Bo Martin, set to become a father soon, Darren Reynolds will carry the bag for the Open champion until July. Lowry has decided that the Irish Open is the only tournament he'll play in Europe for the rest of the season. Silverstone say they are flexible with dates if Formula One cannot reach an agreement with the government to host the British Grand Prix in July. The 14-day quarantine period for those entering the country announced last Friday has cast doubt on the Northamptonshire venue's ability to host the race as planned. Managing Director Stuart Pringle says the circuit would be willing to stage a behind-closed-doors GP later in the year. And finally, for me this morning, lads, Evander Holyfield has opened the door for a charity bout with his rival Mike Tyson. We've heard rumours of this over the last week or two. The pair met twice, of course, in the ring during their careers, with Tyson biting his opponent's ear in that fight in 1997. Holyfield says he's willing to step through the ropes for a third encounter, but Iron Mike has to request it.
He has to want it first. I don't want it. He has to ask me. It's a bit like who Connell's taken to the Debs. Shane, your twin obsessions over your shoulders there? Man on the Moon and Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, forget Lance Armstrong. It's all about Neil Armstrong. That's not in fact Neil Armstrong. That's actually Gene Cernan, who was the last of 12 Americans to walk on the moon. So yeah, two of my obsessions in my little cave in the attic here. And also, but the real Armstrong is Neil, of course.
And you've got Muhammad Ali special coming our way over the weekend?
Yeah, really good interview. Ger Gilroy, he's an Irish American. His great grandparents emigrated from Inchicore in the 1800s. But I mean, he's the last survivor of Muhammad Ali's inner circle. He was there. If you look at a video of the Rumble in the Jungle, he's the first guy into the ring after Ali downs George Foreman. You know, he was the guy who I kind of whispered in Ali's ear and made Foreman the enemy of the people in Zaire when that fight happened. And he's had a front row seat to history. He introduced Ali to Elvis Presley. And plenty of other famous people besides, but he's just got so many stories. I mean, he was pallbearer at Ali's funeral, at Ali's parents' funeral, and really, really good stuff. Full hour with him, so that'll be on offtheball.com and Go Loud app on Sunday evening from 7.
All right, good stuff, Shane. Thanks for that. We'll keep an eye on what's going on across the rest of the day on offtheball.com. Now, here's what's coming up on the show for you this morning. We're obviously going to get into the sports pages straight away. Then Brian O'Driscoll after that talking about his memories of the Aviva Stadium around about 8:30, so we're about 10 minutes away from that now. And then getting into it with Tyler Hamilton around about 9:15 this morning. So if you've got anything you want to get off your chest, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
We'll start with a quick look at offtheball.com this morning for you, and we'll show you that that stuff from Ron O'Gara and Keith Wood last night, obviously, is one of the lead stories. Munster fights, also this one. They're all men. They can sort it out themselves, says Alan Quinlan, talking about brothers fighting each other at one point. English Women's Super League season ended with immediate effect. Patrick Ewing discharged from hospital following a COVID-19 battle, and Holyfield would take on Tyson in trilogy bout for charity. So maybe that would be a way that they can both somehow get back into the ring, but nobody really wants to see that because it would be not good for anybody.
The Irish Independent this morning: Leinster will struggle if fans are kept out. Dawson, that reads the headline. This is Leinster Chief Executive Mick Dawson, who says that the province is facing a difficult period financially after cancelling the sale of season tickets for the 2020-2021 season, citing the challenge posed by social distancing. There's also a photo there on the back page of Jack Byrne getting tested for COVID-19. The pilot programme launched for the League of Ireland, involving a few clubs there yesterday. Shamrock Rovers, Jack Byrne there, obviously one of the first to get tested. And Corcoran overtakes Millennium Man Cummins as Munster's top players named. Martin Bretney has been going through his top 20 players in each code for all of Munster over the last 50 years. And Brian Corcoran has become the number one Cork hurler, obviously. And then a couple of other things from the Irish Independent. Any analysis of the past must take place through the lens of relativity, says Colm Keys, and Dortmund need to make their title shot in duel with Bayern.
The Examiner's next for me, and inter-county and club teams got together in pods over weekend, so maintaining their social distancing, small enough groups, not on GAA pitches, but not insured as well. Obviously, they're doing it at their own risk, because the player injury scheme is suspended for the time being. That's Jack Byrne being tested for COVID-19. League of Ireland players begin robust COVID-19 testing process. Lou Kellett of Advanced Medical Services conducts a COVID-19 swab on Jack Byrne at their training facility, Roadstown Group Sports Club in Dublin yesterday. So that's all part of that. And then Amber Jarrett has already been tested 4 times for COVID-19 ahead of the resumption of the Frauen-Bundesliga this week. And Rob Heffernan wants a special dispensation for international athletes to be allowed to train and move around. And it looks like that type of special dispensation is going to be one of the things that allows the Grand Prix to go ahead in England. That's something that Boris Johnson wants, and he's going to get it.
Serge Aurier's photographed on the back of the London Times this morning. Obviously, it broke lockdown rules twice, but back in training following rules this week. You got that story about Silverstone there as well. And Igalo, £75 million to quit Manchester United, as you mentioned, at 7:30. I need fans to play, meanwhile, says Roger Federer. He believes the international tennis tours should not resume until spectators are permitted to attend tournaments, despite growing optimism from organisers that the US and French Opens can go ahead behind closed doors.
I would say we absolutely don't need spectators for tennis at all, right? Like, it's one of the few sports where you'd be like, this looks fairly similar to me.
And the amount of cash swilling around the sport as well, you would have thought that it would be a worthwhile trade-off to actually go and play in front of an empty arena and actually get that sport back on television. That's certainly where I would lie in a lot of these professional games, is that if there is a huge amount of money to be lost by the fact that you're just going to wait for fans and social distancing to be gone. I think you're going to be waiting quite some time.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Irish Times this morning, Sports Tuesday, is a picture of a crowd at the Aviva. Aviva 10-year ticket holders seek clarity over payment. This is in the aftermath of Leinster's decision to scrap their season tickets yesterday. And the IRFU are going to meet to discuss the issue and their approach to it. Making Six Nations home and away tournament could be its ruination. That's Jerry Thornley sounding a warning about the home and away nature of what is being proposed. And then that study advises no more reset scrums to reduce virus risk. And they also have a story here. College Classic unlikely to go ahead as planned. A decision is due on the matter next week. It appears increasingly likely some postponement or rescheduling will be required. That decision also ultimately coming down to the governing body of American collegiate sport, the NCAA, and the visiting teams from Navy and Notre Dame. It's funny with the college football season, not that far away, the different conferences all having their own decision-making powers. There isn't one overarching central body like the NFL commissioner saying this is what we're going to do, and everybody has an agreed template for it. So those decisions have been fairly slow to be passed down, because I think there's probably quite a lot of pressure from Washington to get games and to have crowds in stadiums and to make America look fairly normal, considering there's an election on its way.
The back page of the Irish Mirror this morning, it's a photograph of Mark Noble pulling weights in training. Players are all pulling in the same direction, writes the headline. Premier League boss is confident the players are ready to go again, and even the doubters like Troy Deeney can be persuaded to return soon. Stay the lad is the headline on Newcastle. Players want Bruce, not Poch or Rafa. So it looks like Steve Bruce is going to get the backing of the dressing room, despite reports this week that Rafa Benitez could be going back. And Fight Club, Royals legend on that brawl in 1996 replay, and Villa's 80s thriller, Tony Morley exclusive. That is the Irish Mirror this morning.
The Star this morning is Let's Get It On. Premier League stars to back restart. This is the players are kind of coming around slowly. They've been told, Star Sport have been told, no club has currently got any more than 2 players missing from training after 2 rounds of coronavirus tests in English football's top flight, either due to positive tests or an unwillingness to return. So the vast majority of players are coming back. Kevin's a long shot for Leeds. Marcelo Bielsa is weighing up a second bid for Burnley's Ireland star Kevin Long. Kenny Egan has been speaking with Kieran Cunningham. Irish boxing has to change. Ireland boxing legend Kenneth Egan thinks the sport will die here unless those charged with governing the sport step up to the plate. We all know the reason why. We all know the elephant in the room. It all kicked off with Regency and that kind of stuff, and it's horrendous and shocking. Everybody knows that Irish boxing is dead at the minute. Boxers based south of the border haven't any chance to fight on their home soil to sell tickets to get people to watch their fights. And then Jack, wide open to a return. It's Jack Byrne. Can't wait to put smiles on people's faces again. And so he's getting tested for that one.
The Irish Daily Mail leads with revealed plan to save EFL. Clubs are warned player accept points per game. Playoffs will happen. Key votes next week. Photograph there of Jurgen Klopp as well in fairly cheerful form. Stop laughing at the back, Jurgen. Inspectors visit Melwood to check training protocols are being followed. And TJ Reid has joined the calls for the GEA to reconsider club lockdown.
The Herald, there is Jack's road back. Rovers ace Byrne happy to be taking first step, and twins help Dubs and Cody's cats. This is a story of 2 sisters from Monaghan who are actually games development officers for Scary's Harps and Vincent's, and also are performance analysts for Brian Cody's Kilkenny team. So it's Louise and Emma Byrne. A good story from the Herald there about some of the unheralded people in the GAA world who kind of keep the whole thing ticking over, keep the show on the road, and keep our kids being trained.
The Irish Sun this morning leads with shocked and scared. Stunned Ramsdale fears he caught virus at supermarket. Aaron Ramsdale, the Bournemouth and England under-21 goalkeeper, he tested positive on Friday for coronavirus. It came after a negative test last Monday, and he believes he got the virus at the supermarket. Things are looking up for League of Ireland with that photograph of Jack Byrne getting tested. And Kante, right to get the Willies. Willie Caballero has revealed he and his Chelsea teammates back his teammate N'Golo Kante over the COVID-19 fears that he has.
The Irish News for you this morning. This is the back page headline. O'Neill, I've given up hope of Tyrone action this year. Oma Ace more hopeful on prospect of club games, which kind of seems to be going against the grain of what everybody else is saying at the moment. And Ulster boxing clubs aiming for August resumption. So I don't know what's going to happen, but certainly the mood has changed quite significantly, you would say, over the last few days, with yesterday no official death being reported, certainly out and about. Not a lot of people wearing masks. Everybody seems to be like, the worst of this has passed, which isn't quite what the medical advice is at the moment. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks.
The Guardian this morning leads with the story about the Women's Super League in the UK. It's brought to an end, but title remains in balance. So they're in a bit of a predicament here. They could scrap the entire season. They could give it to Manchester City, who are at the top of the table, but they could give it to Chelsea, who are 1 point behind Manchester City and have a game in hand and would win the season on a points per game basis. So 3 different options there. So a lot of uncertainty around the WSL and where the title will go, if the title goes anywhere. And new rules in Spotlight as top flight vote looms. Players and managers will be the last to examine the Premier League's rules for return to contact training today, just 24 hours before they are put to a crucial vote. So tomorrow there'll be further movement on the Premier League's comeback.
Couldn't they just have a playoff for the Women's Super League? Wouldn't that be the best thing to do? Just those 3 teams.
That'd be class. You could use it as a way to start next season, because it seems to me that part of the reason why they're calling this season off is to ensure that they're actually good to go for the start of next season. Could that be a way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you hand out the trophy and there's a celebration and you're proper league champions. And the final paper for now is the Telegraph this morning. PM an 11th hour bid to save British Grand Prix. So, Boris Johnson, nothing else on his plate at the moment, but very interested in saving the British Grand Prix. So he said he wants it to be saved, and it's going to be saved. Insert your own Dominic Cummings driving joke there. And reset scrums and upright tackling set to be banned. This is a story that I think the Times actually had at the weekend as well, where some details have emerged really of what the World Rugby plans include. So this would be an end to reset scrums, automatic free kick being given, that already a full ban on choke tackling would happen, that there has been a move. There's certainly been a pilot test in France in amateur club rugby to try and move the tackle point below the waist, and this would be an opportunity for everybody to push that through much quicker. Again, all of these suggestions seem to be short-term suggestions to try and get rugby back in some form, as opposed to, right, we're changing these rules and this is what's going to happen forever. So there are some suggestions around what might happen with mauls, for example, obviously given the amount of contact time there, so that you might have to look at a rule change where, now this hasn't been suggested by World Rugby, this is the debate that's begun on the back of this, that you'd make it a rule that the scrum half has to take the ball out of a line out and pass it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, Eoin, this comes down to people's appetites. What changes are you willing to make to what went before to get something back?
Alan Quinlan was saying yesterday that it's not rugby, that he wouldn't go for it whatsoever. Be interested to hear the views of a lot of players, because it definitely seems that it just totally alters the game. Like, it's one thing coming back to play sport without fans. At least you have your game. But coming back to play a game like rugby, which has got more and more physical down through the years, to take that element of physicality out of it, essentially, for a huge part of the game, I think that's just too big a change almost. But then you get to the old adage of, is it better than nothing? And it probably is, but it does diminish the competition. Like, winning any title right now, for me, doesn't diminish anything. But if you're changing the rules of the game this drastically, it does diminish it. It
sounds like they're getting to some kind of consensus in the NBA. They haven't formally announced things. I think that there's an expectation that some news might break today about what would happen. So they're going to remove a bunch of teams who have no real prospect left of making the playoffs, have a shorter number of games, and then have full playoffs. So you'd get the full number of games that you would have had. It'll be 5 and then best of 7. So at some point there had been like, let's have a March Madness, and I think that idea got thrown out. So as an NBA fan, what do you want to see? Yeah, is the process to actually get a convoluted way of getting more teams involved in the playoffs, I think is what they're thinking, that they may actually have the top 12 in each conference available to make it to the next step, but between 8 and 12, for example, you would have a 1-game playoff to make it into the top 8 into your regular playoffs. Like, definitely think it works. It's the sort of sport that can be contained fairly well in terms of the small-ish playing groups. Like, they've spoken about the bubble, but now they're talking about home courts, not having fans there,
does that diminish what a team would achieve by winning a championship? I definitely wouldn't have thought so. It would actually make it more difficult for a 1 seed, for example, to go on and win the championship, because what is the benefit of a 1 seed anymore if you don't have your home support behind you? So say if LeBron was to go on and win the NBA championship this year, I think it actually kind of enhances his legacy rather than diminishes it. And I think then it's the idea to get the next season started by Christmas Day.
Yeah. So there's going to be, they'll have the new season started by Christmas Day, and then that'll be slightly curtailed, but not much. So, right, let's move on, because it is 8:35 a.m. this morning. Brian O'Driscoll is going to join us next on OTB AM. But first, let's hear from John Barnes. He joined Joe this weekend for a Legends interview, and he got talking about his favourite player, none other than Liam Brady.